Thank you, everybody, for inviting me for the presentation today. I will be delivering it in English, but I speak fluent Thai, so hopefully if I can finish a bit earlier, maybe I can also discuss some issues in Thai. I'm really glad to be following following Rachel's presentation, as my talk would actually is focusing on resilience and entrepreneurship in times of autocracy with regards to Thai digital media organization. And I like to bring up a quote based on a study that I conducted that every single media organization in Thailand that I interviewed has said the government is watching us every day. And I think this quote is important, not because there's actually actual evidence by organizations that they have been monitored, but it's the perception of them being monitored that really matters, because that perception, whether or not substantiated by actual evidence, guides the way media organization actually conducts themselves and what kind of journalism it would conduct if it believes that it's being monitored by the government. So this is this is a graph that basically shows, based on the data actually drawn from the Digital Society Project, the same project that Rachel uses data for some of the reports. It's just to plot Thailand, in relation to all the other countries in terms of the degree to which government social media monitoring and arrests on political content is going on. So the lower the country is, meaning the scores the closest to zero on both sides of the exits, the worse the situation. So in comparison to the rest of the world, Thailand's performing particularly bad on both counts when organizations are being asked whether or not they feel that social media is being monitored and the extent to which political content have led to arrest. But today's talk will not focus necessarily on how terrible the situation in Thailand is in terms of government censorship and content censorship, as well as the degree of repression organizations feel, but that I wanted this talk to be something that we can share, that we can improve upon in a terrible situation, right? So this talk would actually focusing on what kind of resilience or entrepreneurship we can develop and we can nurture amongst media organizations, that we can actually improve the situation, regardless of the repressive political and economic and media environment. So the questions that I would like to pose for this talk are: how do Thai digital media organizations respond to increasingly autocratic media environments? What factors drive a thriving media organization given the current situation? And what impacts has the pandemic had on the sustainability of digital media organizations, specifically to Thailand? And this talk is based on a study that I was part of, Inflection International, that focused on addressing digital media organizations from 12 countries around the world, which included the study of 201 media organizations, 15 of which are drawn from Thailand, as you can see in the slide here: Prachat Thai, The Isan Record, The Momentum, The Matter, Thai Publica, Green News, Echo, Pattaya News, Thai Inquirer, People, Disrupt, Samnak Khao Isara, The Standard, 101 World, and Coconut. So we only focus on digital native media organizations, so organizations that start as a digital organization, because looking at their development and evolution give us a better indication of how digital media organizations that are actually emerged as already digital organizations are doing, given the current internet environment. And this includes 500 survey questions as well as in-depth interviews. So what do we find when we study this? We find that these organizations did not actually stay away from hot button issues. Even though they're digital media organization natives, which means that they came out of digital platforms directly, they didn't have they didn't have the traditional offline version. They focus largely on human rights, politics, gender, health, and environment, all issues that you expect these organizations to face a lot of resistance and monitoring and potential censorship. Example here is ECHO, which I will talk a little bit more later about. This video had more than a million views, was focusing on the issue of potentially canceling graduation, which is a big political issue in Thailand. And it didn't shy away from these very sensitive issues. And we find that 100% of the organizations that I studied have reported being monitored by the government, but none of them have actually lost revenue as a result of pushing sensitive political issues in their content, and that they are fighting back, especially against DDoS attacks, which is the most important form of digital attacks against digital media organizations, through the use of defensive software, all of which that I've mentioned here are free: Cloudflare, Project Shield, and Deflect. So 25% of all the organizations reported that they had their content removed by social media moderators, and that they had faced both a censorship from tech platforms, censorship from government, and self-censorship. When asked about the degree of media freedom and how safe the journalists felt, 51% of all the media, Thailand and other countries, have reported they have been harassed, some of which received direct threats and suffered DDoS attacks, and a small percentage actually were victims of physical attacks themselves. Journalists who are most at risk of harassment and attacks are photojournalists, journalists that are using cameras. And as I mentioned earlier, DDoS attack is the most common form of cyber attack organizations receive, and that they have chosen to fight back. Within looking at the business model, which is something I don't think we talk too much about when we think of press freedom, when we think of internet censorship or internet repression, but it's something that is crucially important to media organization is how do they get by, right? Given the political environment, but also the financial environment. And as Rachel mentioned, a lot of the tech companies are actually making money out of the backs of the work of journalists and media organizations. So how do they make money? How do they make revenue? And for some, how do they even make a profit? This is the snapshot of Southeast Asia. So Thailand is included in this. And it turns out that, in fact, Thai digital media organizations have the most profitable media organizations in comparison to the rest of the region. Not all of them are profitable, but the ones that are profitable, or the really profitable ones. And that, in fact, it only takes them 2 years since the establishment to turn themselves around and make the highest level of revenue in the tiers, tier 4, for these organizations. And when you break down by the revenue income, there is even spread across from making no revenue at all, which is the case often for nonprofit media organization, up to very high degree of very high level of revenue. So there's a massive inequalities within the Thai media organizations in terms of the degree to which they're profitable or making revenue. And this revenue reporting is consistent prior to and after the COVID-19 pandemic. The biggest source of revenue for these organizations is grants from private foundations or philanthropic organizations. The vast majority of the grants actually come from Google, and to a lesser extent, Facebook. For Thai media organizations, they also receive quite a lot of grants from government agencies within Thailand, and to a lesser extent, international government agencies. The second source of revenue is advertising by national advertising, which is an important source. But for the Thai media organizations that are doing well, ad revenue from within the country are actually the #1 source of revenue for the most successful Thai digital media organization. So how do the profitable, successful digital media organizations in Thailand, how did they do it? What were some of the important factors that help drive financial sustainability and success of the digital media organization? The #1 factor, and this is something that not many digital media organizations are endowed with, is the startup capital, right? To have the initial money from the founders were really critical in setting up the digital media organization for success. But they're not the only factors. Having high initial investment alone isn't enough to guarantee success. Having a dedicated sales staff, at just one person focusing on sales and business development, actually increased revenue by 6 times. And this is something I think we don't talk about when we talk about press freedom or journalists. We think about, oh, what kind of things that we can do to improve the level of safety for journalists. But in fact, we actually need to put more attention to looking at how we can help these digital media organizations survive financially and thrive financially. And one of the things that is important is to actually have a sales and business development person in the organization, someone who actually knows how to do sales and how to market the organization. This is not something that a lot of founders I spoke to of these organizations thought about initially, because often digital media organizations are founded by journalists themselves. These are people who are trained to write content, write stories, are good narrators, but they're not always good with money. And this is something we underemphasize when we talk about financial and in terms of viability of digital media organizations, something that we need to focus on. The main revenue source, again, are actually ads for Thai media organization and content creation for non-clients. So the fact that you have the right talent, the right people to market yourself, are able to actually create content and provide that as contracts, are actually really good for digital media organization and allow them to use the revenue that they gain to focus on pushing boundaries on sensitive political issues without suffering financial consequences as a result. So successful, thriving digital media organizations in Thailand actually spend a lot of money on getting the right talent, particularly sales, business development, and content types of talent. So the 3 C's that are important for the Thai digital media organizations are content, collaboration, and courage. And I think courage in particular, we don't often talk about as the key to success. We talk about courage as something that could lead us to, things like harassment, but we require courage as well. So this is content from Echo again that I mentioned. Echo is one of the most successful case of digital media organizations in Thailand. This video that they created focused on how do young Thai Muslims fall in love. And I wanted to showcase this because there's a few things I want to notice. The first thing is subtitles in Thai. In fact, there are subtitles in Thai, not because the lady in the video wasn't speaking Thai. She was speaking Central Thai, not a Southern dialect. But in every single video of Echo, there are Thai subtitles. So when I asked one of the editors and founders, Kun Cham of Echo, I said, why do you have subtitles on your content? And he said, we noticed that a lot of the people who consume our videos do it on their mobile phones in public places, which means that they can't always turn on the sound. So we put the subtitle there to allow public viewing of content without, needing to have a headphone or what have you. And that says so much about an organization that's able to really get to understand the consumer and their behavior. right? To the level of being able to create the content, displaying subtitles, because they really understand that's what their consumers want. To showcase something quite political, all right? This video is really political because when you actually watch it, it's talking a lot about minority rights, about how many Thais don't really understand how young Thai Muslims live or fall in love. And it also demonstrates the important partnership with the PEN here. It's a Pattani-based organization to produce this kind of content that can draw upon the real local people from the area to speak their voice. So content, collaboration, courage do make a successful digital media organization, even when they focus on highly political issues. And this is something we need to talk more about in terms of finding the ways to improve the work of journalists in Thailand. What else is then important for the success of a thriving digital media organization in the Thai case and more broadly? Content is no longer the king. Content is no longer the only king, but data actually is the new king. Big data analytics skills is absolutely crucial for content marketing. And as I mentioned earlier, Echo found now, through understanding statistics and metrics for consumption of their content, what type of things their consumer might like or want, and what would it look like. And the important thing about the emphasis of big data analytics skills isn't that you need to hire someone, a data scientist to be part of the organization. If you have the funds, that sounds great. But a lot of the organizations that I spoke to that do data analytics on their organizations, especially in the performance of their content, are people who are actually using either free tools online or teach themselves how to do something on their own. These are not people who were trained to do this initially. They train themselves and they use freely available tools. So it's not that you can invest in talent of someone who already has the skill, or you can develop the talent within the organization because you have the vision and the leadership to see that these skills are actually crucial to the financial sustainability and viability of the organizations, and to conduct in-house research to keep to understand that consumer behavior does change and it's dynamic. It's not something static. I mean, I can give an example of when I talk to the media organizations in Thailand that are quite successful. They're able to give me the editors that I spoke to. They're able to give me statistics of how they're doing immediately, whereas some of the organizations that are far less successful, it took them weeks to give me some indication of how many people actually come onto their website or view on their Facebook. They have no idea, right? And in fact, they outsource it to an intern who may or may not have been paid to give the statistics. They don't know. So you're flying blind in a way and hoping that the content would work. But you don't actually know yourself and have those statistics with you to help guide the kind of content and the look of the content that would work. So how do we increase openness and safety amongst media organizations in Thailand? And I believe that we need creativity and courage, both of which actually reduce self-censorship. As I mentioned, all of the organizations that we studied reported they're being monitored by the government, but they've also reported that this has no bearing on the political issues that they want to push in Thailand, that they had not suffered any loss of revenue because they had the courage to actually go after and publish and create content on politically and socially sensitive issues. They need to have key contacts when in trouble regarding content. And this include contacts within the social media organizations, contacts for pro bono lawyers, as the third point, access to pro bono legal assistance, contacts for technical issues. They need to have those people at their reach, even though they're not employed or on a payroll as staff. They need to seek collaboration and partnership however they can. And collaboration and partnership tends to help create content and co-ownership of content that then help to grow audience for both organizations. They also need to gain knowledge on content policy of social media platforms. Most of the people that I spoke with who are basically editors or founders of media organizations in Thailand didn't really understand what content is allowed and not allowed on any of the social media platform that they heavily rely on. They didn't have a clue. Like, when I asked about hate speech, what Facebook, how Facebook defines hate speech, no idea. All of that information is actually publicly available in multiple languages, and just getting yourself or somebody in your staff familiar with the actual content policy of the platforms you actually use is actually really important, because it gives you some safeguard in terms of understanding what's allowed, what's not allowed, and recourse to when trouble emerges, what are the things you can do and can't do in terms of if someone's asking for content removal and those sorts of things. Just having the knowledge of the policy is really crucial. Next, please. How do we then increase financial sustainability? There's really no point in fighting for more freedom for media organizations if they don't exist, because they can't survive in such a difficult financial environment for media organizations in general, but particularly digital media organizations. The number one factor is to have access to all sorts of free assistance that are freely available for media organization. For example, there's a Southeast Asia Technical Assistance Initiative that actually provides free technical service to media organizations who may not have someone on staff who can give them, social media metrics and statistics, website traffic, trying to figure out what kind of trying to set up some kind of software to fight against DDoS attacks. There's actually assistance specifically for Southeast Asian media organizations, including Thai media organizations, set up for this. Right? Sometimes getting grants, which is my last point, getting grants from organizations like Luminate would actually provide a free technical person for you for a year for free, to get things like, metrics performance, to do big data analysis, to build some knowledge around business development in a digital media environment. That is freely available, and that can be provided to organizations for no charge, right? We just need to apply. So a lot of the Thai media organizations that I spoke to don't apply for grants very much, definitely not international grants. And I know that there are barriers in terms of, grant writing is a skill, having the right English language skill to be applied for these types of grants is crucial, but just an awareness that these grants actually do exist and can really help bring in greater, viability for the company, but also more data analytics skills, more ability to get their content to more people, to even push for more politically sensitive topic is really important. And it's something that isn't appreciated or even aware, many media organizations are not aware of this. Next, please. And so for funders, for organizations that would like to help digital media organizations in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, the things that they can do, I think, call for action is what Rachel was saying earlier. What kind of call for action? We need more tech and business training for journalists, not just how to write content that will go viral or how to protect themselves against harassment. Those things matter, but equally matter is tech and business training, actually, to help bring the organization to the next step. we should also make it easier for journalists to find and qualify for pro bono services. A lot of these services are free, and they can really help increase skills and qualifications of the people in the organization. But to find them and to qualify for them are not always easy, and the document might not be in the local language, might be difficult to access. So some of these things that we can do to make it easier for organizations to get help. And grants also should be targeted more to increase entrepreneurship and resilience, right? I think we accept that probably in the next 5 years or so, the trend of digital autocracy is going to continue. So what do we do about that? How can we not just survive, but thrive as a media organization, given the situation, right? Given this, and we know from the Thai case that I just spoke about, that there are really successful organizations who focus on politically sensitive issues, but thrive. So this can be done and has been done in Thailand. So we can do this if we can push for more skills and for more awareness of the technical and business skills that are as important as the content and creativity skills that are needed amongst our journalists, but particularly the leadership of the digital media organization. The situation of media freedom and internet freedom in Thailand is not good. It's actually very bad when compared to other countries. But what can we do to increase resilience and entrepreneurship amongst journalists, amongst media organization leaders, is what I'm leaving you with today. We can do this by pushing for more awareness on the technical and entrepreneurship business development side of skills, to encourage more journalists and more media organization leaders to invest even in free tools to help increase those skills, because they would help increase financial viability of the organizations and allow these organizations to weather through a pretty difficult and highly repressive media environment. Thank you so much.